everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be about some of the releases in April that I'm excited about. So I think I have 15 books to talk about today. So I'll start with the releases at the beginning of the month and work my way through the month. We've got a helper here. I don't know if you can see her, but she is assisting. So we'll obviously start with April 7th, and there are several releases that, well, obviously have already come out. So the first one I'll talk about is The Glass Magician by Caroline Stevermer, I think. There's comparisons to The Golem and the Jinni, which was actually a really great book. I read it several years ago and really enjoyed it. It had sort of like a, I don't know, magical quality to it. But this says it takes place in New York's Gilded Age. It talks about all of, you know, the big families, like the Vanderbilts and everything. And then our main character is doesn't have any of these family connections, but what she does know is stage magic, and she can dazzle audiences with an act that takes your breath away. But then one of her tricks goes poorly, and basically she discovers that she can shapeshift, which is really interesting. She has the potential to take her place among the rich and powerful, but first she has to learn how to control this power before the real monsters descend to feast. So that sounds really cool. Obviously there's sort of this urban fantasy element to it, which of course I love. So then the next book that comes out, or has already come out on April 7th, is Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward. And I think this is the trade paperback version that just came out. The ebook version may have already released, I'm not entirely sure. But this is a high fantasy book. We've got ruling families fighting each other and plotting. It's they remain heedless of the threat posed by the invading armies and of this one empire. And it's yet as this republic falls, heroes rise. So we have a champion of the republic, and he is an epic warrior, but has some sort of secret that would see him burned as a heretic. So I don't know if that means he has magical powers or something. And then we have his sworn enemy, and I guess this guy is some sort of political prisoner who wants to lead a rebellion. And then we also have this guy's sister who is seeking to break free of their tarnished legacy to escape the expectation and prejudice that haunts their family name. And then, obviously war is spreading across the Republic, and I think these three have to work together in order to save the country. I don't know if that'll be necessarily a flintlock fantasy book, but just certainly a epic high fantasy with war, so I'm here for it. Next book that I'll talk about has come out on April 7th is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. So this is pitched as Steel Magnolias meets Dracula in a 90s set horror novel about a women's book club that are obviously dealing with a vampire. So our main character, I think, is trying to take care of her family, and her husband says is a workaholic, and her teenage kids have their own lives, and she has to take care of her senile mother-in-law. So she has this book club of Charleston ladies who are interested in true crime. And I guess one evening after a book club, our main character is attacked by an elderly neighbor. So then the neighbor's handsome nephew comes into the picture. He's attractive, he's well-traveled and everything, and then I guess children on the other side of town start to go missing. So I read Horror Store by Grady Hendrix a year or two ago, and really enjoyed it. It was kind of a super cool concept where, it's a horror book set in an IKEA-like store, and the entire book is an IKEA catalog. So I thought that was really clever, and this one sounds entertaining. I do like vampires, and I like that it takes place in the South. The next book I'll talk about, that's also on April 7th, is A Bad Day for Sunshine by Darynda Jones. Now, she is the author of the Charlie Davidson series that I've talked about before on my channel, which I don't know if you can see it up there. But it's an urban fantasy series about the Grim Reaper. So this is a new series for her, and I don't think it has anything supernatural in it. I think it's all just it's just a thriller. But this takes place in New Mexico. Del Sol, New Mexico is known for three things. It's fry an egg on the cement summers, strong cups of coffee, and now a nationwide manhunt. So our main character, Sunshine, has returned to town as the sheriff. She kind of thinks that things are going to be fairly quiet, but then a teenage girl ends up going missing. Then I guess it's add to that the trouble at her daughter's new school, plus a kidnapped prized rooster named Puff Daddy. So, she's got obviously several things to investigate. We've got a U.S. Marshal as her love interest, I believe, and I think he is maybe an ex, I'm not entirely sure. But I think this is just going to be a thriller. about, you know, this our main character Sunshine trying to investigate these kidnappings and generally be sheriff in this New Mexico town. So that sounds fun. I really like books that take place in the Southwest, since, you know, that's where I'm from. But I've enjoyed Darynda Jones' writing. I think she's really funny, and I think this will be this. I'm excited to see a new series from her, even if it doesn't necessarily have supernatural elements. You know, like I do like thrillers, so I anticipate that this will be fun. The next book that I'll talk about for April 7th is Bonds of Brass by Emily Skrutskie. So I had mentioned this at some point fairly recently on my channel, but this is a sci-fi book where this empire has like invaded at least one world. And so one of our main characters has spent like 7 years at a military academy for this empire, and he's like trying to become the best pilot. So while he's at this military academy, he makes really good friends with his roommate, and I guess there's some sort of assassination plot on this roommate. And, you know, it's like we learn that this roommate is actually heir to the empire. So then our other main character, like, saves his best friend. I think they flee from the academy, and they're trying to get this guy back to his throne safely. I think I remember seeing it pitched as sort of like, you know, if Poe and Finn from the latest Star Wars movies were interested in each other, and, you know, just like generally fun sci-fi. So I actually want to give away of an ebook version of this, so I do have it, and I'm planning on reading it soon. So the next book I'll talk about that has already come out on April 7th is The Loop by Ben Oliver. So this is, I think, a YA sci-fi. Basically, we have this loop thing, which is a futuristic death row for teens under 18 that's one long repetitive purgatory. So every inmate in this loop is serving some sort of death sentence, and they can push back their execution date by 6 months if they opt into these delays, which are, I guess, scientific and medical experiments that benefit the elite in the outside world. And then I guess there's rumors of a war on the outside, and the inmates start to learn about this, and the government-issued rain stops falling, strange things are happening to the guards, and it's not long until the inmates are left alone in their prison. Fellow prisoners are starting to maybe go a little crazy and are trying to kill him. The warden is losing her mind, there's rabid rats in the train tunnels, and a population turned into murderous monsters to try to break, and he's trying to like break out of the loop, obviously, to like find his family and like figure out what's going on. So that sounds like super cool. Elise from Elise Reads and Speaks recently read this and enjoyed it, so I'm really excited to get to it. Alright, so now we move to April 14th, and the first book I'll talk about here is The Last Emperox by John Scalzi. So this is the third and I think final book, in the Interdependency series, and this is like a space opera that I've talked about before on my channel, but basically like we have this flow that kind of allows for travel between really distant worlds, but the flow is starting to collapse. So, you know, obviously we've got like scientists trying to figure out what's going on and like predicting where these flows are going to collapse and, you know, which worlds will be isolated. So we follow the Emperox, who's one of our main characters, and we've seen her in previous books, but she obviously is in control of this empire. I think she's trying to save all these people, all of her people, from like the isolation that comes with the flow collapse, but people are opposed to her and are trying to prevent her and like from doing this and like take her from her throne, basically. But I'm really excited to read this. I have very much enjoyed this series so far, so I'm excited to see how it concludes. The next book I will talk about for April 14th is The Lesser Devil by Christopher Ruocchio. So I think this is a novella in the Sun Eater world, and which is the book series where we had like Empire of Silence and Howling Dark, and both of those made my top sci-fi of last year, so, you know, really good series. So this is actually following the younger brother of our main character from, you know, the main series. So he ends up being summoned by his grandmother, who is a duchess, and I guess she's dying. He ends up like flying to go see her, and I guess he's flying into a trap. So it's like there's whispers of treachery among the Duchess's many daughters, rumors of hidden knives in the planet's court, even if he can even make it there. And so he is obviously like going to have to fight for his life, and it's like he has to make his heroic stand and contend not only for the foes, you know, arrayed against his house, but with the cultists who dwell in the mountains above his family's ancestral home. So that sounds awesome. I'm definitely going to get this. I really love this series, and, you know, basically like any sort of short stories or novellas, as well as like obviously the main books in the series. I'm going to be getting them all and reading them. So now we move to April 21st, and the first book I'll talk about here is Girl Gone Viral by Alisha. So this is her like second book in this modern love series. The first book was The Right Swipe, which I think I read last year and enjoyed. So this one, I think our main female character is apparently enjoying an innocent conversation with a random guy at a coffee shop, and then some stranger has live tweeted this entire encounter with a romantic meet cute spin, and I guess this has gone viral. So she leads like a pretty private life and like really doesn't want this to be broadcast onto the internet. Besides, everyone has it wrong that hashtag cafe bae bro, he isn't even the man that she's hungry for. I guess people are trying to like figure out her identity. So her bodyguard offers his family's farm as a refuge for her, and she's had a crush on him, I guess, for a while. So it's like she's resigned to being just friends with him until they share a single electrifying kiss. So that sounds cute. And like I said, I really enjoyed the right swipe, so I'm excited to see what this one's like. The next book I'll talk about on April 21st is Raceless Dance by Beth Durst. Now, she wrote the Queens of Renthia series, and I mean, she's obviously written other books, but I've only read the Queens of Renthia series, which is really a good fantasy series that I do recommend. So this is supposed to be a standalone book that's separate from her Queens of Renthia series. So I guess we have some sort of like reincarnation or something. It's like who you are in this life will determine your next life, but you can change your destiny with the choices you make. But for like the darkest individuals, there's no redemption. You come back as a monster, and you're doomed to be this monster for the rest of time, unless you can win these races. So our main character is an elite rider of these monsters, and she's become a professional trainer. And then I guess some sort of accident has happened, and like her reputation is damaged, and she like has no money. So she needs to have the prize money, I think, from this race in order to prevent a temple from taking her daughter away. So then we have another character who is trying to get away from her like really controlling family and like terrible fiance, and so she is a rider of one of these monsters, but she needs to have a trainer, obviously. So they come together, and our trainer pairs our rider with a strange new monster with the potential to win if he can be tamed. But it's like in this sport, if you forget that you're riding on the back of a monster, you die. So yeah, that sounds awesome. I already like her riding, and this whole concept of like beast riding sounds super cool, and just like the whole race in general, I think it's going to be awesome. Alright, so then the next book I'll talk about on April 21st is The Girl and the Stars by Mark Lawrence. So this, I think, is the start of a new fantasy series that takes place in the same world as the Book of the Ancestor trilogy. In the ice, there's a hole in which broken children are thrown. So this is like the pit of the missing, I guess. Our main character has some sort of difference from the rest of her people, I guess. And it's like, it tears her away from the only life she's ever known, away from her family, from the boy she thought she would like spend the rest of her days with, and so she has to like adventure out there. She learns that the world is kind of like crueler than she imagined, I think. And it's like she learns that her weaknesses are another kind of strength, and the cruel arithmetic of survival that has always governed her people can be challenged. So I don't have an entirely clear picture on what this is going to be about, but I don't really care because I know I'm going to get it. I really enjoyed the Book of the Ancestor trilogy, so I'm excited to go back to that world and, like check out a slightly different location, I think. So the next book I'll talk about on April 21st is Shorefall by Robert Jackson Bennett. So this is the second book that's following Foundryside. In Foundryside, this was kind of like a mix of sci-fi and fantasy where, like, our main character had the ability to basically, like, talk to objects, kind of. There's like this epic heist going on, and they're after this artifact that can kind of like rewrite the world. Shorefall is obviously the follow-up to that, and I think this takes place several years after the events of Foundryside, and she's like trying to transform the city into something better, and they're trying to like rid the city of like these really controlling people. Then we have like kind of like a very high-powered being trying to be reborn. I guess he was able to use the magic in this world, like this art of giving objects sentience, and he was able to convince reality that he's something more than human. And so he's like kind of acting like a god and like wantonly destroying everything, I guess. So our main character is going to try to stop him, and I guess she's going to have to call upon a god of her own and unlock the door to a new like scribing technology. So that sounds super cool. I loved Foundryside. It's one of my favorite fantasy books of last year, so I'm definitely going to be picking this one up. So the next book on April 21st is The Ranger of Marzanna by John Skovron. So I think you can see this. I have read some of his books before. This is the Empire of Storms trilogy, which is really fun. But I think this is going to be the start of a new fantasy series where our main character is training to be a ranger. So this is, I guess these rangers are an ancient sect of warriors who have protected the land for generations, but I guess the old ways are dying and all of these people have been forced into hiding or killed off by an invading empire. So our main character's father is murdered by Imperial soldiers, and she is going to be, it's like she's traveling across the bitter cold tundra and trying to gain the allegiance of the only other force strong enough to take down the invaders. And obviously, like, nothing about this quest is going to be easy, and I guess her brother is the most powerful sorcerer in the world, and he's fighting for the Empire. So that sounds super cool. Obviously, we've got these siblings on different sides of a war. That sounds really neat. Like I mentioned, I already like his writing, so this sounds like a start to a really great fantasy series. So then I think the last book on April 21st that I'll talk about is You Let Me In by Camilla Bruce. And this is going to be, I think, like a supernatural thriller. And it's like, so Cassandra Tipp is dead, or is she? I guess she is like a reclusive, eccentric novelist, and, it's like she's always been prone to flights of fancy, and everyone in town remembers the shocking events leading up to her infamous trial, and it's like she may have been acquitted, but the insanity defense only goes so far. So she's left behind nobody, just all of her money and one last manuscript. I guess her husband had been mysteriously disemboweled, and this had never been solved. And then a few years later, there's a shocking murder-suicide of her father and brother. And it's like, Cassandra Tipp will tell you a story, but it will come at a terrible price. What really happened out there? And who has she been protecting all along? Read on if you dare. So that sounds really cool and kind of creepy, and I'm definitely intrigued by that. The last book that I'll talk about today comes out on April 28th, and that's Seven Endless Forests by Genevieve Tucholke. So this is a standalone companion to The Boneless Mercies, which I read fairly recently and enjoyed. But this one is some sort of retelling of King Arthur. And so we've got some sort of devastating plague that has happened. So we've got a girl who is kidnapped by a flame-loving Flemish wolf priest who leads a pack of ragged, starving girls. So then our main character is trying to find her sister and joins up with a druid and some artists known as the Butcher Bards, and so they're trying to find, obviously, her sister, and as well as the mythical sword. Along the way, there's magical night wilds and mystical drakes who trade in young men. There's some sort of pig witch. I'm intrigued by that, and they're going to be facing wild, dangerous magic. Our main character is setting out to rescue her sister, but she may find it's merely the first step toward a life that is grander and more glorious than anything she could have imagined. So that sounds really cool. I love these sort of retellings, and King Arthur is definitely interesting. I liked The Boneless Mercies when I read it earlier. So I'm excited to kind of like go back to this world. I like had mentioned this when I read The Boneless Mercies, where, it's like I kind of felt like there was more to be explored in this world and more to be told. So I'm really excited to see that there is going to be, obviously, this standalone companion. There are the 15 books that I'm pretty excited about that come out in April. Obviously, there are more books, and sort of, with all these things going on, release dates may change. I know, like, some of the books that were supposed to come out in April have been pushed back to July and later, but, it is what it is. But yeah, so let me know in the comments if you think you might pick up any of these books. Do they sound interesting to you? Also, let me know if there are any other releases in April that you're particularly excited about. I hope you're having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.